All right. What's up, Judah, man? How you doing?
I'm doing awesome, dude. We are live back here again from our individual home studios, sheltering in place, but that has not slowed down the content creation. We got lots of good stuff grilling up on the content grill here for today. We are going to be talking about uh, we're talking about how to get from knock knock, this motivated seller opens the door to ink on paper signed contract with pennies on the dollar offer, and how to make that happen. And one of the key factors in making that happen is understanding who you're talking to and realizing that depending on how you want to do it, there's you know two, four, 16 different personality types. I think that the disc method is one of the simplest and best ways. And we're going to be talking about the four personality types here today, how to recognize them, and then how to, in your pitch, when you're talking to people like that, how to maximize effective communication with those people.
Yeah, exactly. So yesterday, we, just kind of to re-up what we discussed yesterday. I mean, we explored, how to prepare before you get in the house. Now you're walking up to the door. The first time I was introduced to the idea of personality types, it shocked me. We all think we're individuals, right?
Right.
But it's amazing how predictable we really are, and how everybody pretty much acts the same way, and within certain confines. um and that's a real advantage if you're trying to predict what someone's going to do or how they're going to react to something. And by knowing some key characteristics and traits, you can do a lot to in the way of persuasion and in the way of leading them down the right path, and giving them the information that they need to make an educated decision, right?
Right. How to effectively talk to somebody to get the outcomes that you're looking for. And remember, the outcome that you're looking for is a yes or a no.
That's right.
And if you miss communication with somebody, they might say, I need to think about it, when you could have gotten a yes or a no, which is ultimately your goal. Or somebody who might otherwise have said yes might say no because you were speaking emotionally to them when they needed to hear logic, or you were speaking with great enthusiasm when a calmer tempo would have been what resonated with them.
Well, and you touched on the most important part here is communication. I worked with a business coach for several years, and communication was like one of the core aspects of our interaction, and like what we really focused a lot on. He used to say that communication was not what you were saying; it's what the other person was hearing. And that's a big insight. For me, I was
Right.
like, wow, that's incredible. So anyway, let's jump into this and kind of see where we go here. So yeah, I titled today's conversation customizing the sales pitch to maximize performance. And really, tomorrow we're going to go into an actual sales pitch and like a pitch deck, and kind of how to go through that. I wanted to first touch on the background behind it, because that presentation has a lot of different items that are they're relevant to different types of personalities. And being able to identify who you're dealing with and who you're talking to, it really will allow people to kind of guide the conversation, and like you said, give them the information that they need. All right, so where are we going here? I get too many screens here, Judah. All right, so we'll start this with a quote. This guy's a researcher from Northeastern University, and he did this study. I thought this was kind of cool when I was researching this. They did this study where they took cell phone data, and they took cell phone data just based on GPS signals, and they were all blind, right? But they tracked people, and what they found is that people were so ridiculously predictable in the way that they behaved that, like, they said, look, 93% of people act the exact same way. They are 100% predictable on their next action. If they go here, they're probably going to go there. And anyway, his quote was, "Spontaneous individuals are largely absent from the population." So that's
And what people don't want to know, what people don't want to admit even to themselves, is that they are very predictable.
Yeah.
and that you leave clues.
Yeah.
So what might happen is you are on, monster.com looking for a job in San Francisco.
Yep.
And then also you were at Home Depot and bought some stuff.
Yeah.
And that night over cocktails, you said to a realtor friend of yours, I'm thinking about listing my house. Well, guess what? That's all part of the metadata. And they know that you were on Modster. They know that you went to Home Depot. They know that you recently spoke to a realtor because your phones were, in close proximity to each other. Or even without that information, they can start. Maybe you just were talking to your wife about listing the house. You will start seeing ads for realtors and for listing your house and things to do to get your house ready. And you're like, oh, they bugged my phone. They heard this conversation. No, it's just that before people list their house, they usually do these things. Or if somebody does these things, it means that they're about to list their house.
That's
And
right.
we leave clues, and we're able marketers are able to make bets on what somebody is likely to do. It's not quite as scary. It's actually the market. I guess the way to think of it is this: is there's not as much wizardry and magic going on in marketing.
Hmm.
It's just that you're more boring and predictable than you wish you were.
Well, I got a funny story that I heard years ago, right? This is before a lot of the questions about data intrusion and people tracking you and all that kind of stuff.
Privacy concerns.
Exactly. Target sent out an advertisement and a discount coupon to this young lady who was like 16 years old, and it had her name on it. It was to her home address, and her father got it, goes in and threw a fit at Target. He's like, "Why are you sending my kid diapers? Like, she's 16. She's not buying diapers. What's wrong with you? Guess what? She was pregnant.
Right.
He didn't know she was pregnant. She didn't even know she was pregnant at the time. But because of her buying habits, Target said, okay, well, looks like she might be pregnant. We're going to send these things out. So, hey, look, whether we want to be predictable or not, we oftentimes are. So let's start by kind of defining what we're talking about when we're talking about personality types and why it really matters, right? I mean, on a superficial basis, personality types are just like certain personality traits. They're psychological classifications. Okay. And these traits lead to certain behaviors, certain tendencies that we're going to have. The reason they matter, I mean, this like little chant or mantra has stuck in my head for years. But people like themselves. They like people that dress the same way, listen to the same music, have the same interests. I mean, that's why you go watch people playing basketball. They tend to have the same kind of clothing on, the same kind of shoes, all that kind of stuff, and they congregate in the same type of places. Imagine that. Basketball players go to basketball, the place of the basketball hoop, and these behaviors, they lead to tendencies or motivation, right? That's the basics, right? All right. So you alluded to this a little bit earlier, Judah. There's dozens and dozens of different classifications and tests and stuff like that to identify different types of personalities. But we're going to use the DISC test because I think it's probably the most straightforward, right?
Yeah, it's the most straightforward. It's simple enough to be easily understandable, but it is complex enough to be meaningful. The old method, I hate when people say, "Oh, he's an A type personality. That guy, he's just an A type personality." Well, wait. I mean, you could be saying that he's a D, or you could be saying that he's an I. What do you mean by the
Yeah.
fact that he is an A type personality? Or if people say he's
Yeah.
not an A, they usually people are where people talk about being a beta. Beta male is a term that you hear in society and pop culture. Well, does that mean that they're a C, or does that mean that they're an S? Really, all people are talking about when they talk about alphas and betas is how outgoing they are, how extroverted they are. And there's two different ways that you can be extroverted, and there's two different main ways that you can be introverted. And so it's not the DISC personality profile certainly has its flaws, but it is not overly complex and is not overly simplified. And for most people, if you understand disc orientation, you will be light years ahead of people who don't buy into this. And no one is. The other thing to say right here from the beginning is, look, that's a target. So everyone is going to be a dot on that target. They're not going to be the whole way out like on the I rim, so therefore they have no C in them. They're also going to have a little bit of D and a little bit of S in them. So that's going to, factor whether they're to the left or to the right or whatever. So you're always going to have a little bit of that. The other thing where this came into play with me is I had somebody in my personal life who I was having just the hardest time relating to, the hardest time having just a positive interaction with, and where there was just always this friction. And then I realized, oh, I'm an extroverted, people-oriented person. That's what an I is. He was an introverted, tasks-oriented person. That's what a C is. So
Yeah.
we just were as far apart as we could be in
Sure.
the personality. And I'm like a capital I, you know what I mean? Like I'm an ID mix, you know what I mean? And he was a very introverted, very tasks oriented person. So the extremes were pronounced. I would say you should be disc profiling and just kind of as a way of like practicing. Think about, well, what is my, not just what am I, but what is my wife? What are my kids? What's my boss? You know what I mean?
Let's spend some time here and kind of concentrate on what these are, define them a little bit more,
Yeah,
right? So we start with the D. Like dominant is technically the descriptor here, but I always think of like direct or driver as that D. Somebody that like they're task oriented and it's like 100% straightforward. We're going forward no matter what, and the focus is on results, right?
right.
Like looking at the bottom line.
These are your dictators. These are your
Yeah,
CEOs. You know what I
yeah,
mean? These are your what you typically would think of as your business leaders. They're the task oriented, and they are outgoing.
well, and so the important thing to remember with these type of people is they have to win.
Right.
They have to win. And guess what? We're going to let them win.
Right.
Right? We want to let them win so hard that when we walk out of there, they're going to go and tell their wife about how good of a job they did, or their husband about how good of a job they did.
Right. With these people, they're also not interested in backstory. They're not interested in fluff. They're not interested in narrative. They're
Yep.
interested in bottom line. They're interested in you. Whenever I'm talking to a D, I always say, listen, you're smart enough to figure this out. So therefore, I'm grooming their ego. You're smart enough to figure out a lot of this stuff. So I'm going to cut this short for you.
Yeah, exactly.
I've just communicated with them in two ways that honor them and speak to their individual personality type.
Right. Now we get to the I. These are inspiring. Now, I think the best descriptor here, or like in my mind, when I think of an I mean, typically these are like salespeople and entrepreneurs, and a lot of times the entrepreneur, we're not talking about the guy who's running the business and the day to day. We're talking about visionary, the guy with the idea, the guy that is in front of the room speaking, things like that. Very outgoing and people oriented, and very ideas oriented, as opposed to bottom line, driving things down the road.
Yeah, bad spellers, salesmen,
Yeah,
motivational speakers, politicians, those types
yeah,
of things.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. With S, now we've got supportive, and I've seen this called social as well, where the idea that they are very much oriented on people and building relationships, right? So like when I social, more so the idea of being part of society, as opposed to, you look at a C, they're definitely reserved, but they are like reserved and more bottom line based, right?
Right, they're more task oriented. So your S's sometimes they're oftentimes called secretaries and support staff. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily like that. I like to think of them as nurses I like
Hmm.
to think of them as mothers. I like to
Yeah.
think of them as some of my best trainers and some of my best personal business mentors have been S's because
Yeah.
they take time, they slow things down, they focus. They're focused on others, not focused on themselves. These are people who are reserved, sure, but they're also people oriented. So they're low energy, people oriented, and you're exactly right. They focus on preserving relationships and creating win-win situations.
That's right. That's right. And then we have C, which is cautious, careful. I mean, engineers, right? Accountants,
Engineers,
engineers.
CPAs, these are the people who I least understand.
But I mean, and well, it's so funny because all right, so this goes back a couple of years. Ian Walsh, who runs our Philadelphia branch, he and I started a wholesale company. This is going back years, but we had this client that bought a ton of properties from us. He was a really great investor, really really amazing guy. But just like you, I'm a little bit more extroverted than Ian is, and Ian's very direct, straight to the point, great guy. But he related so well with this client, and this client was definitely a C. I mean, he came from writing algorithms at a hedge fund to investing in real estate, and like his every single thing was based on the numbers and the analysis. I mean, that's a true C, 100%. It's like all based on numbers. When you deal with people like this, again, they don't care about the backstory. They don't care, and like they care about the bottom line, but it's more so based on what are the facts and the processes and what are the rules and regulations that go along with it, and how does this work exactly?
Doing it
And
correct, doing it proper. They will
yep,
notice spelling mistakes in your presentation book and think you are less professional because of
oh,
it.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. So, these are real life things that you have to look at. But the one other important part to know about the disc test and these different types of personalities is that just because you're a driver today or you're this dominant personality today, different things that happen in your life and different situations that you have going on, they're going to change that perspective from time to time. And so you might be a really high D in one time in your life, and then life changes. You have some kids, things get a lot more chaotic, and you might morph more into an I, or you don't feel like dealing with people anymore, and you become more of a C. So like this is a fluid process. So it's important to understand this in the moment when things happen. And I mean, I've even seen people that are supportive on the S type personality that once you get past that initial reserve, they become a lot more I.
Yeah,
It's like the neighbor that when you move in, they don't talk to you, but after a year or two, you get to know them, and all of a sudden, every time it's like, what's it called, a chatty Cathy? They
yeah.
just won't shut up. So just knowing that as background is important when you're going into the house. The sooner you can identify the type of personality that you're dealing with, the faster you're going to be able to get a good reaction and a good feedback here. No,
And
I
one of the ways that you do that is the first 5 to 10 minutes in the house should be nothing about real estate. It should be, oh, I see you've got some trophies there on the wall. You hunt, or oh, I see some pictures here from the last time you went vacationing. Blah blah blah. I mean, like, just talk about kids, talk about vacations, talk about work, talk about their individual situation of what's going on with them, and see if by the way they talk, the way they present, whether they by what they focus on, if you can kind of flush out what it is that they are interested in.
That's right. That's right. The easiest way to do this is using mirroring, and this happens in two different ways, right? The first is by literally creating a mirror of what you're looking at. I've heard people describe this as you go up to the door, and however you're greeted at the door, you put off the same vibe. Hi, how you doing? My name is Josh. We talked on the phone earlier. I'd like to walk through the house and see this and this. Well, if you've got somebody that comes to the door and is just very passive and quiet, and hey, be passive and quiet and don't be in their face. On the flip side, if you've got a driver that's in there and says, listen, this is what I want you to do. You go take a look around, do your measurements, do whatever you got to do, and then give me your best price and we'll go from there. Well, then you better be assertive. You better be in,
Right.
no problem. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out. I'm going to look at the house, check things out, and I'll come back to you with a price. It's like whatever they're putting out there, you got to put it back out.
100%. And this actually comes up with conflict resolution. So and it's not. It's just communicating with them in a way that they like to be communicated with. So in my office, they have this thing called "Oh, you Juda'd them," which I do a very good job when somebody is dissatisfied with the results that we've had for whatever reason, getting on the phone with them and resolving conflict with them. And sometimes people are like, Judah, you were shouting at them. Judah, you told them maybe we don't want their business anymore. Judah, you were like all up in their face. How was that? And I said, yeah, I mirrored their image. They were here. I went up here with them, and then together we brought the conversation down. So that's in a conflict resolution situation how it works. But you talk to people the way that they want to talk. It's actually one of the things, Josh, that's very difficult about doing a live show like this. I realized this a long time ago when I had a radio show on WHP 580. Is you're talking to a void. You're not even talking to an audience where you can see are people nodding or not nodding and things like that. It's one of the things that's so intimidating about why people don't like being on camera. They don't even realize how much we're wired to want to mirror people. So you want to do that anyway. Just lean into it and intentionally, actively do it.
Yeah. So there's one other aspect of mirroring that I really want to bring up, because this is a trick that I learned just recently. Right. One of the most important parts of a negotiation, especially with a motivated seller, is to find out why they're selling, because why they're selling allows you to look in and say, okay, this is the problem, and this is how I'm going to fix it. And if you can fix their problem and give them a resolution that works for them and works for you, it's a great scenario. When you're talking to people, especially in a situation where you're about to talk money, right? A lot of times they're going to be closed-lipped. They don't want to give you any more details than they have to. Well, mirroring, not just in acting like them, but listening to what they say and starting your part of the conversation by repeating the last several words of the sentence that they just finished. So Judah says, well, we're thinking about moving to Florida and living on the beach. And then I respond with, oh, you're thinking about moving to Florida? And all of a sudden they start opening it up. Oh, yeah, because in Florida they've got this and the prices are lower and we're going to be able to do this. And I always wanted to go, I always wanted a place on the beach, blah, blah, blah. And next thing you know, I realized that, geez, Florida is the place to be. And I wonder if I could find them a place in Florida at a discount that they can move to that would allow them to have more money in their pocket at the end of the day, and still for me to be able to buy the property for $100,000 less than they want, than they're offering. And so like it can create scenarios where that works. Now beyond the mirroring, like customizing your presentation. As you go through your presentation, each one of these personality types have traits that you really have to push on. We talked about the D, like getting to the point and letting them win. One way that you can let them win and like win big is when you make your offer, it has to be way below what you'll accept, right? Because if they're asking 150 and you want to be at 100 or maybe like 120, you got to start at $90,000 or $80,000 so that they can beat you up and beat you up and beat you up. And at the end, all right, I'll pay you 115. Fine.
Right.
And
you've got to let them win. You've got to be able to say a better deal for you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Fine. For you, a better deal for you. That's what we'll do.
That's exactly right. People that are inspiring, you want to make friends. Now, this is really, really important. You cannot be disingenuous here. You cannot fake it. Like they might be a real terrible person, but every single person in existence has something that you can like about them. And honestly, hang on to that, push on that, and feel a camaraderie there. And by the end of your conversation or your presentation, your time with them, they're going to feel comfortable. They're going to feel it coming back, and who knows? You might actually walk out with a real friend that's going to last for, a real friendship that's going to last for quite some time. That's a big deal. Keep it.
Absolutely. Yep. You want to keep things fun. You want to talk about the fun things that you're going to do with the house. You want to talk about why you enjoy the rehab process and putting great properties back out there. You also want to talk about when you're negotiating with them, how this is going to allow you sow seeds of, I'm sure that this has been weighing on you and it's been cutting into your free time. It's been cutting into the freedom and
Yeah.
flexibility that you enjoy in life. And having it listed with a realtor is definitely going to just drag that process out. And so you not only want to have fun, but you want to sell against whatever else it is that they have going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For supportive personalities, all right, this goes back to like their place in society and in the world around them. Yesterday, I mentioned that like my internal motto for my company was good houses for good people. I picked that line specifically because I want those supportive type personalities to look at me as a way of improving the lives of the people in their community, as improving, as bringing a young family or a new family or somebody that's can contribute in a positive way to that environment that they're leaving, even though they're not going to be there, because these people, they care, and you got to be genuine with them, and that's really where you're going to excel.
Right. And you talk about the family that's going to be there, but you also talk about what you're leaving behind for the neighbors. And so
That's
you
right.
say, when I do a rehab, I use only the most qualified contractors. So that they're not out here, in the middle of the night or on weekends doing work. They're not going to be junking up the place when they're doing it. We're going to be moving in somebody because of the high quality rehabs that I do. We're going to be, and this is true even in like a C quality neighborhood or something like that. We're gonna be moving in people who have good quality, blue collar jobs. We're gonna bring in foremen who are in the blue collar, arena. And the same is true like with every class of property. You talk about hitting the high end of that class and how that's going to be good for the people that move into the house, but also good for the neighborhood and things like that.
Yep, that's exactly right. And then our last category, the C's, the cautious and the careful. Uh, you said it, and I'll agree with you that these are the hardest for me to identify with. But what I've found is building facts and figures into the presentation and emphasizing them. We talked yesterday about days on market, the list to sale ratio. The number of listings versus the number of sales, and how that impacts the value of the property. All of these things go into the conversation, and when you're dealing with a C personality, they're soaking that up. I mean, I've even taken it to the point where if I know that I'm dealing with somebody that falls into this category, we'll sit down and read every line of the contract, because it's almost impossible to do a one call close with a C
Yeah.
unless you are. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, you also, just like the D's, because these people are task oriented, you want them to be the ones who end up making the decision. And so when I'm sitting down with a C, I say, hey, Josh, I want to get you all the information so you can make the most informed decision possible.
Yeah.
Here are some reasons why you would want to list your property with a realtor. And here are the bad things about listing your property with a realtor. You could potentially do a cash out refinance yourself and then manage the construction yourself and make
Yep.
sure that you're hiring good contractors yourself and go over it and things like that. And then you could list this property and sell it yourself. And here's the good reasons for that and the bad reasons for that. Jay Abraham is a marketing extraordinaire, guy who I've read some books from and everything like that. And he was speaking to a gold company. They were selling gold, and he said that when he advised the company to do a pamphlet instead of just having all the good reasons to buy gold, all the reasons not to buy gold,
Mm-hmm.
and have it be written with authenticity. Here's the reasons you don't want to buy gold. Their sales almost doubled because people who are likely to buy gold anyway are looking for a hedge. They're already, their customers have a disproportionate number of C's in them, but they were trying to sell them like they were D's or I's. And as soon as they started talking to them like they were C's, giving them all the reasons to do business with them and all the reasons not to do business with them,
Yeah.
they felt like they had enough information and they were comfortable moving forward and being led.
That's right. That's right. And you know what? C's really what they want to know is they want to know the rules. They want to know this is a structure behind how this is going to work. And if they can understand it, then they can make an educated decision on whether that's for them or not. And that's really the crux of anything, is being able to communicate how you can help people, and identifying what their real need is versus what they're saying their need is. And if you can match those things up, you can be really, really successful. So Judah, the last 2 days, we've been talking a lot about, a lot about theory, right? A lot of theory.
Background information that goes into, you need to understand this before you can actually start swinging at the ball.
That's exactly right. What we're gonna do tomorrow is we're going to actually go through an actual presentation on a house. I'm going to take you through the pitch deck that I use, and we'll discuss it as we go through. But what I'd really like to try to do here is get someone on that is non-scripted, non-real estate based, to take us through the conversation, to actually be the one getting pitched. Like, hey, look, this is your property. Let's walk through it. Here's what I'm going to offer you on the property. If you're watching here and you'd like to be involved in that manner, we'd love to have you on here. Judah, if you've got somebody you want to bring in, I've got a couple ideas I'm going to reach out to, and we can talk about this a little bit more as we go along here. But having, now that we've gone through the theory, like we've prepped everything, we got all of our weapons and our, the arrows in our quill, or in our
quiver.
Thank you. We know who we're talking to. We understand who we're speaking with. Now it's time to really, put the rubber to the road and get out there and take people through the presentation, walk them through, and take them to the point of making a decision.
Yeah, it's very important to understand that you're going to screw it up the first time. And probably the first 10 times. And your goal is to be authentic, but you're not going to come across as authentic to begin with. And because you're not coming across as authentic to begin with, your challenge and your temptation might be to give it up and stop. That's actually not the thing to do. Even though you're bad at it, even though you're coming across as disingenuous, you need to keep on practicing and truly come across as disingenuous, genuine, not sound like you're coming across as genuine. Actually want to communicate with them. If I wanted to speak to somebody who spoke Spanish, I would try to learn Spanish so that I could speak to them. That's not disingenuous. That's not me tricking them or manipulating them because I speak English and they speak Spanish. No, it's doing everything I can to speak to them the way that they need to be heard. I have people in my contact list who respond best to text messages. I don't like text messages. I like picking up the phone and calling people. I have people who respond best to email. There's ways that you can communicate with somebody the way they want to be communicated with. It is not trickery or flammery to talk to people the way that they naturally want to be talked to. Yeah. It took me a while to believe that. And I just want to honor those people out there who say, wow, this sounds like it's manipulation. This sounds like you're teaching me how to take advantage of people. No, if you're thinking about or trying to take advantage of people, you're already doing it wrong.
Well, and a lot of that comes from not understanding everything that goes into this. So small pipeline syndrome is a really big problem, and it leads to a lot of bad decisions, right? And small pipeline syndrome, if you're not familiar with the concept, it's the idea that you have, 5 leads that you're chasing around a month. Well, if you will look at those leads a million different ways and figure out a way that you can make money on them if you only have 5 leads. But if you have 5,000 leads, you don't have time. You're going to find the best of the best of the best that fit your model perfectly. And so a lot of times people get into convincing in a sales presentation as opposed to educating and bringing people to a decision point, because they're only talking to 5 people a month or one person.
And really all you're doing is selling yourself.
Right.
Really, some of those 5 people aren't really that motivated, and you shouldn't be even talking to them to begin with.
That's
And
right.
you're talking yourself into a deal
Yep.
instead of trying to talk them into a deal.
That's
You're
right.
you're a decision collector. That's all you're looking to do is collect decisions. And I really like what Ron LeGrand said. It's one of my favorite business quotes. If it ain't low hanging fruit, I ain't eating.
That's right. That's right. So, yeah, today's broadcast, today's show is brought to you by Slate House Group and Hard Money Bankers. You want to give us your 15-second pitch on
Yeah,
Slate
I
House?
mean, 4,000 units in 4 states, and we are at 98% collection of what we would expect. We are a big company that I always believed acted like a small company, and we now have the data to back it up.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Hard Money Bankers, we are a private lender. We've got local offices all over Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland. We service all of those areas. We're all filled up by local investors. We can move really quickly because we're a direct lender. We don't broker these deals out, and because of that, we can give you a same-day approval on a loan, and we can close within 24 hours. So, if you're interested in getting a hard money loan, you can give me a call at 717-213-8488 or visit us online at hardmoneybankers.com. That's it. That's all we got.
See you, everybody. We'll be back at noon tomorrow with more great content.
That's right. See you tomorrow.